Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Morgan James book launch. My name's Jim Howard. I'm the publisher for Morgan James. And today I am really super excited because we've got an amazing author with an amazing story to tell. Today we're talking with Fred Haywood. And Fred is the author of Racing with Aloha, an inspiring journey from humble barefoot Maui boy to champion in the water. Fred, thank you for so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, we're really excited about the book and the launch coming up and being able to take some time to talk with you. And it took you a long time to write this book, as you and I have talked about before. But you know, you've lived such an incredible life, and you were born in Maui, even before Hawaii became a state. And you talk about growing up as a child, just the ocean was your playground. So, what was it like just to be able to grow up playing in the water every day?
Oh my gosh. A lot of our Christmas cards were pictures of us all on the beach with goggles and fins, surfboards, boats, sailboats. Dad was quite an adventurer and had moved here in 47. I was born in 49. And we lived right on the harbor in Kahului, where there were waves in front, fishing, surfing, everything to do. So that was our daily habit. We had an adventurous start to our life.
I love getting our kids in the water as much as we possibly can, and spending time with their grandkids there as well. And so I can't imagine what it was like, not having the distractions that they have today and just being able to kind of grow up in that way. Um, but that led you into a lot of things later in life as well. That just your comfort in the water and the ability to spend all of that time there. I know Mark Spitz is one of your great friends, and
Right.
maybe one of the, well, not maybe, but as me growing up, the greatest American swimmer of all
At the time.
time, and really close
Right.
to you as well. But his dad had a huge impact on you, um, giving you some maybe an impression. And I think you were having dinner one night, and it kind of changed the way that you looked at your career. So what happened that night?
Well, I was now 17 in Santa Clara High School. And I was sitting at the dinner table with Mark, his mom, dad, two sisters. And I was so excited because I had moved to California in my senior year in high school to swim with Mark Spitz. I had met him the year before on a swim trip with Suichi Sakamoto, my coach at the time, who was the coach of the 3-year swim club that's a famous book now. And I didn't know it. um, I had met Mark at a swim race, the first swim race we went to, and we were doing a 50-day excursion across the US on a Greyhound bus and back for $99 in 1966. And I got a tap on the shoulder, the first swim meet. And I turned around and I said, "Hi." And this kid said, "Hi, I'm Mark Spitz. I just wanted to meet someone from Hawaii. I was born there, and or I lived there for two years, and then I moved out or something like this." And I said, "Yeah, well, my name is Fred Haywood, and I'm glad to meet you." And I turned around and watched him swim. Came back to my coach the next year at school and said, "There's this kid in California that's beating everybody." And I met him. He's 15. And there's nobody faster in America or going to be as good as this kid. And my coach back in Hawaii says, "Well, I think if you move to California and swim with Mark Spitz, you're going to go to a better school than if you sit here and get straight A's in your senior year. So why don't you leave and get over there?" I said, "Well, how do I do that?" He says, "Well, I'll write a letter to your dad and to the coach, George Haynes, time went by. The next summer, I was at Santa Clara Swim Club. That following year, I was at Santa Clara High School. I had a stroke tip in the water one day by the top backstroker. And a week later, I'm at Mark Spitz's house listening to a conversation about Mark going to the nationals and possibly winning 6 events by his dad. And they were constructing their swimming so that they'd swim 2 short races one day and the next day the long distance. So they could only enter 3.
Mm.
And I was mesmerized because here I was realizing my dreams of swimming with Mark Spitz. But not only that, he invited me over to have dinner with his dad and family. And I'm just enjoying this conversation, thinking about what my friends would have thought. What was this like? Oh my God, I was so impressed. So after an hour of them talking, Mr. Spitz turns to me and says, well, Fred, what are you swimming and how are you going to do? And I just took a deep breath and said, well, this is it. I was now ranked 9th in the nation. I said, Mr. Spitz, maybe if I could swim a half a second faster in 100 back, I could get a 3rd place. And he said, what? What do you mean? And I said, yeah, if I'm swimming the 100 backstroke and I just swam a national high school record time last week, but maybe if I could swim a half a second faster, maybe I could get a 3rd place. I just don't get what you're saying. What do you mean? I explained it a 3rd time in more detail, with certainty, and I moved my time 1/10 of a second faster. And he says, I don't understand what you're saying. There is only one person in the pool everyone's going to remember, and 2nd through 6th are all losers, and don't you ever forget it. Screamed at me across the table. And I was like, falling back into my seat. I didn't know what to think. I've never been yelled at like this for trying to gloat what I was going to do. My family was a bunch of funny brothers and sister, and mom and dad. Everyone laughed, and we never talked about how great we were or what we were going to do. We did life without anticipation, let's say. We were much more humble. Anyway, for about 3 days, I was in a funk. I had just swam 3.5 seconds faster the week before. And I'm just saying I'm going a half a second faster to get a 3rd place. There is only one winner in the pool and only one person who's going to be remembered. I didn't think life was like that, but it sure hit me hard because I always thought of myself as a B student. I'm going to take this life on as a B and my intention was to get into a good school. I wasn't even thinking about winning anything. But that combined with a stroke tip, the next week I swam 1.5 seconds faster and won my first national championship I ever entered. And the week before I hadn't even made the cutoff time. So it was quite an extraordinary move and an extraordinary moment for Mr. Spitz to be critiquing me so strongly. But now I understand why Mark was so good. He had no option, no choice. But I'm forever grateful for that moment and Mark's friendship.
Wow. Wow. Sometimes I think it takes something outside of our comfort zone and outside of our norm to shock us to the point that we understand more about ourselves. And
exactly.
And Mark's dad taking that mantle at that moment was something you never experienced, but it took you to a level that you never experienced. So that's really cool.
It allowed me to choose without reservation, let's say. And I wiped off the B student and I chose the ultimate. And the next week I got lined up against the NC2A champion in the trials for the finals. And um, beat him. He leans over the lane line and goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "Fred Haywood." He goes, "Fred who?" And my teammates heard it. And so then they were calling me Fred Who for a while. But there's these moments you chase something. I just wanted to go to a better school. And that was why I chose to take the opportunity to leave Hawaii. And I was actually training in the ocean. We had a raft in Kauai Harbor held together with 2 telephone poles on either side and 2 blocks with turn 4x8s in each lane and with makeshift everything. And it was anchored in the ocean in the harbor. And that's where I'd come from. I had no dreams of this elevated success.
Wow.
And but I guess I learned that you can't lower your expectations from your beginning. You know, where you start doesn't have it can shape where you're going to go, but don't create where you're going to go because you think you're less than from because of where you came from. Just open the door and kick it open, feel the energy and go with it.
I love that. I love that. And that's so much of how Racing with Aloha is written. You share so many stories, just like this one, of how you've used that energy to move forward through your life and career and find those levels of success and happiness. And it's so cool to see your own story unfold through the way you've written it. And you've got other examples in there as well. There's a time with Laird Hamilton, who's perhaps the greatest waterman in the world, even maybe now. But you gave him an important lesson about the ocean. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we both passed information back and forth. I don't know which event you're talking about. I think it's when we were out sailing some treacherous seas. The waves were 30 feet.
Wow.
We had been sailing in 10 to 12 feet in the morning and went to the health food store to eat and came back 2 hours later, and the beach was vacated and only our rigs were there. And 4 or 5 other people we were sailing with had left because the waves were now completely white, breaking across the whole North Shore of Kauai because it was so big. It was probably 15, 20 plus feet right where we were, 25, 30 feet. And we had to sail out through it to get out. But I said, everybody's gone. We walked up to the beach, everybody's gone. And Larry goes, I said, what are we going to do? He goes, coast run. Let's do a coast run down the Hanalei Pier. I'm sure that's where they all went. We'll just sail down there. And we had these big sails up. They were actually, the sails on the board were actually making the board move because it's now not 25 knots, it's 40 to 50 knots. The seas are not 12 feet, they're 20 feet, maybe 25 feet. And when you get that much wind and whatnot, the currents will also be very strong. So we did a launch. It took 2 or 3 wipeouts to trying to get over whitewater's twice as tall as our masts, sailing up against them, and got to go up whitewaters. It's really strange because it's like sailing up a cloud, tumbling back in, sailing, swimming back in. We were pretty brutal. We just charged. All of a sudden we found ourselves sailing outside together. We had both made it out. And now it's 40 to 50 knots. And we're so overpowered that I found out that I could be sailing perpendicular to the wind flow, and the waves were really running this way with the wind because there's big sea swells. So I would just turn on a wave and sail down it and pull my sail all the way in, so I had no power, and just sail on the gravity of the wave until the wave caught me and I would come up to the top again and I'd turn. So I was trying to go down the coast the easiest way, because if I went full blast, there was a lot of change of scenery going on. And Laird's coming by me and going up 30 feet above a 30-foot wave and landing. And finally I'm going, Laird, let's slow this down. I had him stop, and we stopped for a minute, and the seas are just banging, waves are breaking. I said, Laird, I don't want you to break anything because I don't want to rescue you. It's going to be hard to go through 30-foot seas. I think the currents are running 5 knots. And if you break down, you're going out to sea. We don't have a coastline to run on. So let's just tune down the jumping right now. Let's just get down the coast. We went down the coast, and outside of Honolulu Bay, there's a peak that breaks. And the channel was normally half a mile to a mile wide. It was only 50 yards wide of breaking waves all the way into the channel. And so we maneuvered in through it, but adjacent to our entry point, the waves were 50 to 60 feet. And they looked like 3 trees stacked on each other. And the chop on the wave was 6 feet. So if you tried to ride one of those things, you'd be flying off 6-foot waves that were on the surface of a bigger face. It was crazy. We got into the beach, and everybody was kind of blown away because his brother had been sailing with us, and they couldn't believe that we had just sailed down the coast with the same size sails we were sailing in lighter winds. I said, yeah. Next morning on the first jump, Laird breaks his fin, which is exactly, it breaks his fin off. So that was inconsequential to the event that day. It just means he had to go repair it. And beach was 10 yards in and short swim in. But 3 miles out, 5 miles out, it would have been disastrous the day before. So sometimes we do things and we have the right timing. And that one, we averted a disaster. Probably would have been okay because we were both really good watermen. But I just never know. But now Laird has gone on. He's making health food drinks and additives for your coffee and wonderful things. He's really a man of aloha too, And he has the same spirit, having grown up in Hawaii. He rides with a lot of aloha for everybody around him. So he's the first one to come rescue you if you have trouble. He's the first one to give you credit for what you do. He's not jealous. He's just supportive and loving and aloha, and sharing that aloha. So it's important to include our adventures together.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up here, right? Racing with Aloha. That's the title of the book. So tell us a little bit, for those that don't know, what Aloha is and why it's important that the title of the book was Racing with Aloha.
Right. Well, in Aloha, Hawaiians share their aloha. It's a sharing of breath. It's an openness. It's not a winning. It's not a taking. It's not a judgment. It's love. It just comes from the heart. And the Hawaiian community is all about that love. Like, it's our land, it's our ocean. Preserve it, protect it, rever it. And fortunately, God gave me some natural abilities. At the same time, the Hawaiian Islands have uniquely enhanced me with aloha. When we were writing the book, coming up with the title was after the book was finished. We didn't know what we had done. until we truly just examined what I wrote.
Mhm.
And what we were trying to say was that all of the experiences of winning or racing had a lot to do with those around us who shared their aloha. And the more aloha I gave out to my sports, the more I received in return. For instance, when I first got to California, I was swimming in the pool with the national high school champion, Mitch Ivy, and I had just done 2,100-yard freestyles with Mark Spitz, and I could tell how well I was doing by the size of the bubbles from Mark's kick. Normally, they were pretty small. I was that far behind. I'd say 3 or 4 body lengths. And then the same thing happened when I turned over and swam 10 backstrokes against the backstroker in the lane next to me, Mitch Ivy. And Mitch, at the end of the 30th repeat, says, "Fred, you have the ugliest backstroke I've ever seen in my life. You're bobbing and weaving and hitting the lane lines." And I was in shock because I was hoping for a compliment since I was trying so hard that I went under water with my fist clenched, screamed in the water to let all the air out, came right up and put my arms on the lane lines next to him and said, "Mitch, you have the prettiest backstroke I've ever seen in my life. What do I have to do to look like you?" And I paused. And he goes, "Well, my coach once showed me this. Get out of the pool, I'll show you it." And he showed me how to throw a towel at the pool deck, literally. And first throw, it landed 6 feet away from my body because I was swimming with a straight arm. And then he said, "Bring your elbow into your body and pull the wrist next to your hip. But do that when you turn your shoulder like this, throwing this arm up over you for leverage." I said, like a pendulum or something. Yeah. I tried. Pretty soon I could throw the towel next to my toes. I jumped back in the pool. And unfortunately, he renamed me after a few swims in front of him. He called me a mother something, but it was amazing. I was now swimming 3 or 4 body lengths faster, 5 seconds faster, all of a sudden in all my workout times. And instead of being behind him, I swam 10 in a row in front of him. He challenged me to race the last one from a push start. Swam the best time of my life. And I was shocked. Then the next week I went to Mark Spitz's house. Can you imagine a 1-2 punch into the sport?
Wow.
Well, anyway, the weekend before I went to Mark Spitz's house was between a few days after Mitch swam, and the coach says, "I'm going to put you in the 100 back." I swam the 100 back against Mitch that weekend and beat him for the national high school record. And then the weekend after that, I went to Mark Spitz's house for dinner. I had no idea what my futures were holding. And a week later, I swam in Dallas, Texas, and won and beat the NC2A champion to win the AAU national championship. So that was the beginning of the story. I thought that was the book, but Aloha doesn't stop. And when I was trying to figure out the title of this book, I said, "Well, what was it? Fred Haywood memoir, chasing records?" No, we ran by racing at the speed of Aloha. We liked that title. That was a first choice until, let's simplify it to racing with Aloha, because you just have it in your back pocket. You're not working to do anything else but sharing Aloha through all your speeding. And then it worked out in my windsurfing career too, with speed sailing. So obviously, the life was just beginning. Then I had 25 rides to schools wherever I wanted to go, and after winning, the sports announcer at the swim meet, I'm up in the press booth. He says, "You want to make a call?" I just won the nationals, right? And at 17, he says, "Well, who would you like to call?" I said, "I'd like to call my dad and let him know." My dad was a busy plantation doctor on Maui. He didn't have time for much of anything, but he did surf with us a couple of times out in front of the house. And he was kind of interested in the water. And he certainly provided us with all the tools for water, to be watermen. I said, "Dad, I just won the nationals. Isn't that great?" He says, what's the nationals? Is that a high school meet? I go, "Well, it's everybody, Dad. It's college, high school, open. It's the AAU nationals. It's the biggest meet. Isn't it great?" And he goes, "Well, what's great about it?" And I said, "Well, Dad, everyone's slapping me on the shoulders and telling me it's great that I beat Charlie Hickox, the NC2A champion. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's great. They're just saying that." So I repeated that. He goes, "Well, it's over now, isn't it?" "Yeah, it's over." He says, "Well, I'm very proud of you, son, and I love you, and congratulations. And I'll talk to you later." Well, that was my dad. 2 weeks later, when the ship arrived, or the airplane, with the reel-to-reel tape, and they could play ABC Wide World of Sports, he was the happiest person on the planet to see me swim for the first time.
Yeah.
He had never seen me swim outside of maybe paddling for my board or something. But it's almost a story about dads that were totally influential in my life for different reasons. Both great people, both revered and loved.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to share all this.
And you did so well. For everyone watching, this book is filled with stories with purpose and meaning. But most important, it shares the importance of having that love and that energy to carry you forward. And I know Fred has done that throughout his amazing, legendary career as a swimmer and windsurfer, and into his business opportunities as he's moved forward from there. And it is truly a spirit that embodies Fred, and one that he shares in his book, so that as you read it and read his stories, you can start to understand how that can impact you. And Fred, we're so thankful that you finally took the time to write this book and to put your stories down for other people to read and learn from and be inspired by. And are very thankful that you took time today just to share a couple of moments with us, to give us just a little taste of what racing with Aloha is.
I'm sharing the stoke, and I got it continuing. Look at what I get to run with now. I'm excited, and I'm full of love. So thank you very much. And I really enjoyed this.
Oh, absolutely. So Fred, I know people are watching. They're watching us today as we talk about the launch of the book, and maybe they've got a copy of the book already on their way, or they're waiting to get access to their copy of the book. But what's the best way for them to connect, to find out more about the book, to find out more about you?
Sure. I've got a magical team posting for me on Facebook. So you can come and check out my Facebook page, or you can go directly to racingwithaloha.com, one word. On the bottom of that website, you can place your email in there and read the first 10 pages. And the first 10 pages are very exciting, and it's nothing of what we've talked about. And it will inspire you. But I wrote the book so I could keep the inspiration going for the youth and the whoever I come in contact with, and my friends, and share the story of Aloha with my family, because I was quite inspired 2 years ago when my brother passed away. And he says he's sitting in his bed with his phone in the hospital and he's dying of cancer. And he goes, Fred, look at this. I love my company, Maui Jim. He was managing Maui Jim sunglasses, which we love. And he goes, they're calling me right now and I'm dying. I got these doctors over me and I never retired.
Mm.
And I said, but you did what you loved. I don't know. I think you were retired at Maui Jim because you were the man there and you got to have so much fun. And anyway, I said, you know, I can't pass away without writing my story because I've always wanted to write it and I'm going to write my story. So the inspiration comes from adversity.
Mm.
I always feel that it doesn't come from strokes and everything else, but viewing, you know, experiencing adversity kind of gets you motivated.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was Mitch telling me I had the ugliest stroke or Mark Spitz's dad screaming at me or Laird and what we were doing, but the adversity you'll experience is very helpful for you and your futures. And don't go down, go up. Find the stoke out of it. It's all about the stoke. And I'm stoked that you're stoked and we're stoked. So let's keep it going.
Outstanding. Well, everyone watching, this book is amazing. I was super excited to be a part of this the minute I saw it come through the Morgan James channels, and I could not wait to work with Fred to get this book out for him. And I hope that you guys grab your copy because it's inspiring, it's educating, but most important, it shows the true spirit of what Fred lived with growing up and carried on into his future. And you can as well. So Fred, thank you again for taking time talking with us today. It has been such an honor.
Thank you, as we do in Hawaii, shaka. But this is universal and double chaka. That's quite a compliment. Thank you.
Love it. So thank you guys for tuning in as well. And I hope to see you on our next one.